In today's video, we're going to walk you through how to identify and fix the main issue that you're having inside your Google Ads campaign. And for all of the service-based businesses that we're running campaigns for in different industries, we found that these issues usually fall under three core categories. And when looking at the dashboard of your Google Ads campaign, you can pull up each of these three core metrics. So we're going to cover impressions, which will also cover cost per click. We'll also cover conversion rate, and we'll also talk about click-through rate as well. And when running a Google Ads campaign, especially if you put a ton of time and effort into setting it up and you suddenly see that it's just not getting the results you expected, it is very easy to assume that, the Google Ads account is fundamentally broken. And the best way to solve the problem is to just be as analytical as possible by looking at the numbers and trying to identify what the core issue is and focus on improving that from there. And just to briefly break down each of these three metrics and why they're usually the core issues inside any campaign, the first thing you obviously need is impressions, because if your ads aren't being seen, they're never going to get conversions and leads in the first place. And you need to be able to get that traffic with a reasonable cost per click as well, because if your average cost per click is, for example, €50, but you only have a budget of €100 to spend, then it's going to be very hard to get a decent amount of conversions overall for your campaign. And the next one then to look at is your click-through rate. So maybe you're getting enough traffic, and when you do get clicks, your average cost per click is okay. But if your click-through rate, or the percentage of people actually clicking on your ad, is really low, then you're going to get very little traffic through to your landing page to become a lead in the first place. And also, if you have a really low click-through rate as well, it's an indication to Google that your ad isn't highly relevant to what the person is searching for. And with Google trying to give their users the best user experience possible, and Google themselves being incentivized to show the ads that are more likely to be clicked on, then your ads are likely to just stop showing as often as they should be, and your competitors outranking you if they have much higher click-through rates. And lastly, then with conversion rates, so you might be able to get plenty of traffic and clicks from that traffic, but if you're getting clicks and your campaign is spending, but you have a very low conversion rate and you're getting very few leads overall, then it's obviously going to be impossible to see profitable results from your campaign as well. So now we're going to break down each of these metrics individually and give you some average benchmarks for what you should aim to achieve for each of these. So that way then, if you know that your conversion rate, for example, is far below that average benchmark, then that's probably the problem in your case. And if you'd like a free checklist as well that covers all the actual steps you need to do to make sure that these metrics are fully optimized, and everything else involved in setting up a Google Ads campaign and managing the campaign from start to finish, I'll leave the link for this checklist down below. And if you are a service-based business looking to have all of this done and implemented for you, I'll also leave a link for that down below. Now, when it comes to impressions and cost per clicks, first of all, the first thing we want to make sure we are getting to see success inside any Google Ads campaign is that we're getting enough impressions. And if you're not getting enough impressions each day to actually spend your budget, what you can do is go to Auction Insights, where you'll be able to see your overall impression share. And you can see in here in this campaign, for example, this campaign's impression share is only 24%. So first of all, if you're getting very few impressions and your impression share is low, it's as simple as just increasing your bid and you're going to get a lot more traffic. As well, you can also improve your quality scores, but increasing your bid, meaning increasing your max CPC bid limit or your target CPA if you're running max conversions, is the quickest way of doing so. Whereas on the other hand, if you're getting very little traffic and your impression share is high, let's just say it's over 70 or 80%, then the chances are your targeting is just too narrow. So what you'd want to do in those cases is, for example, add more keywords, locations, run your ads during more hours of the day. And if you've expanded your targeting in that regard as much as you already can, then what you'd also need to do as well is, if you're using exact match keywords only, then add some phrase match keywords in there. And expanding your match types will help you get a lot more traffic overall because of the much wider variety of search terms you can appear for the looser your match type is. On the other hand, let's just say you are getting impressions, but your cost per clicks are really high. And let's just say, for example, let's just say you have €100 per day to spend, but your average cost per click here is €30. And let's just say, to keep the number simple, that you need about 10 clicks on average to get a conversion, because you might have a conversion rate of about 10%. That means you're only going to get a conversion about once every 3 days. So let's just stick with the €100 per day, for example, and let's just assume your conversion rate is about 10%. then you really don't want to be paying much more than €10 per click. And if you're using manual CPC or maximize clicks, you can control your cost per click directly in campaign settings and set your max bid to €10. So that way, then you're not going to be spending any more than that for each click. And also, if you're using a target CPA, like most campaigns should be once they get to a certain point, you can also use a portfolio bid strategy where you set your target CPA, but you also have a max CPC bid limit along with that as well, which is a really good way of actually using smart bidding, but you're not going to be paying a ridiculous amount for any individual click. And to bring your cost per click down as well, obviously forcing the bid by having a max CPC bid limit in place is the most obvious way of doing so. But you can also improve your quality scores of your keywords, because the higher your quality score is, then naturally the lower your cost per click will be. And I'll leave a link up above for a separate video that goes into more detail on quality scores specifically. And also on the point of cost per click as well. If lowering your max CPC bid limit isn't a viable option because you simply wouldn't get any impressions because that bid isn't competitive enough for that keyword, then you might need to go to the keyword planner and add new additional keywords in there that, for example, are longer tail and maybe less popular keywords but have lower cost per clicks overall. And you can use the top of bid, low range, and high range to get an idea of what you'll need to pay per click for those keywords. So if you have an idea that you want to set your max cost per click bid limit to a number that allows you to get at least 10 clicks per day, then you can use that accordingly inside the keyword planner when choosing which keywords that you can actually afford to target. And in some cases, you might need to avoid the most popular keywords that all the other companies are bidding on, unless you have the budget to allow you to do so. And one last point worth mentioning on this as well is that you want to go through your search terms report regularly and just make sure that in almost all cases that the search terms you appear for are highly relevant, and anything that's irrelevant is added as a negative. And this is especially important as well where you have limited budgets. When you don't have daily budgets, that's going to get you at least 10 or more clicks per day. The next one then is click-through rate. So are you not getting a high percentage of people actually clicking on your ad when they see it? And just to give you an average benchmark for this, what I would say is that if you have a click-through rate of 10% or above, then you know you have a good click-through rate. Or if you have a click-through rate lower than 5%, then there is a lot of room for improvement. But out of all of the metrics here, it is the one that I would say is least important, because unless you're using all exact match keywords, which is the case that you should realistically have a click-through rate of close to 10%, because all of the search terms that you appear for should be relevant with exact match keywords. But in this campaign, for example, and if you're running any other campaigns that have phrase or especially broad match keywords, then naturally you're going to have a lower click-through rate because there's so many more search terms that you can appear for. And let's just say you had a click-through rate of only 4% because you have some phrase and broad match keywords, and then you also have a conversion rate of 4%, then the conversion rate is the metric you really want to focus on improving. I wouldn't worry about a click-through rate that is lower when you also have a conversion rate that's lower. So we'll get onto that as well. But it's always worth trying to improve your click-through rate, because the higher your click-through rate is, the more Google will be incentivized to show your ad over your competitors, because Google obviously only get paid each time someone clicks on your ad. So it's always worth still trying to get your click-through rate up, even if it isn't the biggest problem that you're having inside your campaign. And just to give you an idea of how I'd go about getting your click-through rate up, is that if you have a ton of ad groups like we have for this campaign here, you could always just start out with one ad per ad group. And then in the ad groups that are actually getting a decent amount of traffic and, actually getting hundreds of impressions, then in those ad groups, you can add a second ad in, and make sure that in your campaign settings as well, actually, that you have your ad rotation set to do not optimize. So this will allow Google to actually send traffic to both of your ads, and that one ad isn't going to take over and get all of the traffic completely. Well, what we have here is two chimney repair ads running inside this chimney repair ad group, and two completely different styles of ad as well, one with an ad strength of poor and another with an ad strength of good, where in this ad it actually has the higher click-through rate and conversion rate, even though the headline is literally just local chimney repair experts and then a pinned headline too saying get a free quote in minutes. So we know that in every case that is what they see on their screen. Whereas in this ad here, we have a lot more variations with all 15 headlines being used, and this one actually has a lower click-through rate. But what you want to do when you have two ads inside an ad group is, first of all, actually let them accumulate enough impressions and gather a lot of data to actually really determine which one has the higher click-through rate. And then once there's a clear winner in terms of click-through rate, you can pause the other ad and then make a new version of the winning ad, but make one change, for example, to one of the main headlines of that ad. So that way, then you will know what was responsible for the increase or decrease in CTR at the end of running those two ads alongside each other. And also, as well, a very common reason I see for low click through rates inside campaigns is that their ad groups just aren't segmented enough. And the keywords they have together in each ad group are somewhat relevant to one another, but they're not the exact same. Whereas in this case, in this campaign, for example, we've gone to the extent of having roof repair separated from roof leak repair. So that way we can really write a relevant ad for those keywords. And if someone's searching for roof leak repair, they're far more likely to click on an ad that says roof leak repair over something that's more generic. And we also have location ad groups as well. So if someone is looking for roof repair in this specific area, then they'll see an ad for roof repair in that specific area as well, which will also increase the chance of them getting the click over their competitors. And in general, the more segmented your ad groups are, the higher your click through rate will be because you're simply able to write much more relevant ad copy for the keywords in that ad group than any of your competitors. So having enough ad groups and having clear keyword focus in the ad is really the number one thing that's going to influence your click through rate the most. But what you also want to do in your ad copy is really try to stand out from competitors and making your ad copy as compelling as possible. And if you'd like some ideas on what to do to make your ad copy more compelling, I'll also leave the link up above to a separate video that goes into detail on how to write compelling headlines and descriptions for your ad copy to get your click-through rates up as well. And then we have conversion rates. So I'd always recommend aiming to get at least a 10% conversion rate to know that you have a high converting landing page and there's clear alignment from search term to ad to landing page fully from start to finish. And what you want to do here again is make sure you've made enough ad groups again so that your keywords are split up into as many ad groups as necessary so that those keywords have highly relevant ads. And with that, then you're able to make much more relevant landing pages that are more likely to convert. Because if somebody searches roof repair in Ashburn, for example, like you have here, and then they see an ad that says roof repair Ashburn, and then they go to a landing page that says roof repair Ashburn, it's clear from start to finish that you offer exactly what they're looking for. And having that clear alignment from start to finish is a lot more important than having a really good landing page design, even though that obviously helps. But relevancy is the really important thing to make sure you have on point because no matter how good your landing page is, if it's not clearly in alignment with what the person searched, they just won't convert. And just before we touch on the landing page, I just want to touch on search terms once more because, in my opinion, these are just as important as the landing page when it comes to your conversion rate. Because we know on average that we're going to have a good conversion rate if the search terms here are highly relevant to the ad of that ad group. And then if they go to a landing page that also says chimney repair, like we have here, for example, then we know that we're going to have a good conversion rate as long as the landing page actually looks okay and is trustworthy and the person can actually trust the company to be able to fill out the form or call directly. And this is also why I'm such a big fan of using exact match keywords as well, because you just know for the most part that the search terms you appear for are going to be highly relevant to the ads and landing pages of that ad group. But I understand in some cases as well that you might not get enough traffic with exact match to actually spend your budget and get the conversions that you need. So if you are using phrase match keywords as well, it's just a case of spending more time inside the search terms report and adding more negatives where necessary. But in most cases, rather than changing some keywords from exact to phrase match, I'd usually recommend trying to add new ad groups with new keywords where possible, with everything as exact match, especially early on. And then when your campaign gets to a point where it's using smart bidding and has a lot of conversion data, then that's when I found that actually loosening up the match types works well. And on the landing page, then to actually get the conversion and the lead, you want to just make sure that, for example, it loads quickly, looks professional, works properly on mobile, and has all the essential elements as well. So your headline is going to be really important. So what you have as your keyword you want to put in here. And this is just a landing page template here just to show you some of the core fundamental aspects that you want to have in place. And this will vary a lot depending on industry. But what won't vary is having a relevant headline, having an offer or subheadline underneath this, having some core benefits that are specific to that product or service, incorporating social proof and making sure it looks as real as possible from the actual review platform, and also having call to actions as well. And depending on the service you offer, for example, you might actually have a photo here if the service you offer is very visual. And instead of having a big form, you might just have a get a quote button that leads to a pop up where they can enter in their contact info. But this is to just give you a rough idea of some of the core fundamentals you really want to make sure that you have on your landing page. For example, social proof, call to actions, benefits, more information about the service, some information about the company. But as long as you have an optimized top of the page or hero section like we have here, and there's clear alignment from search term to ad that they click on to the ads that they click on matching with the headline here, then the chances are you're not going to struggle with getting a conversion rate of at least 10%. And now, if you are having any other issues inside your Google Ads campaign as well, what I'll do is leave the link up above to a playlist that contains all the videos of each of the individual aspects of setting up and managing a Google Ads campaign that goes into a lot more detail on each of the main aspects. So if there's any particular aspects that you're struggling with over anything else, you can have a look at one of those videos as well up above. So I hope this video helped and gave you an idea of what's most likely to be the main issue that you're having inside your Google Ads campaign. And if there are any particular aspects that you wanted a more detailed video on, I'll leave the link up above to a playlist that contains videos from each of the individual aspects of setting up and managing a Google Ads campaign from start to finish. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I will see you inside the next one.